Shout out to Steve Trang. Jump on the Steve train. We real estate disruptors.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for today's episode of Real Estate Disruptors. Today we have Joseph back with Rapid Fire Investments, and he flew in from Montgomery, Alabama to talk about how he's doing $500,000 a month in fees at just 25 years old. Now, he did just turn 26, but this is already happening at 25. If this is your first time tuning in, I'm Steve Trang, sales trainer. Every month we help hundreds of people buy more houses at deeper margins. If you want more information about that, DM me the word sales on Instagram and my team will help you out. I am on a mission to create 100 millionaires, and the information on this podcast alone is enough to help you become a millionaire in the next 5 to 7 years. If you will take consistent action, I assure you, you will become one. And the show is brought to you by our sister company, InvestorLift. If you want access to over 2 million cash buyers across the country, go to investorlift.com, put in Disruptors to get 10% off. And if you get value out of the show, please tag a friend below, share this episode right now. That way we can all grow together. And we are actively hiring in all positions. If you're interested in potentially working with us, reach out to us. And we do have a special show next week, Pardon the Disruption. Be sure to check that out next week. Ready?
Ready.
All right. So first question is, what got you into real estate?
Yeah, so I'll bring it back all the way to growing up in Lexington, Kentucky. Went to the University of Kentucky. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. Actually started out in computer engineering, bounced around a little bit, ended up in the finance department, and kind of had my heart set on investment banking. Able to go up to New York City and do an internship in an investment bank up there between my junior and senior year, and I hated it. Hated every second of it.
Hated the investment banking side.
Yeah, it was rough. I mean, I was coming in at 8 a.m., leaving at 11, 12 p.m. at night every single day, sometimes even later. And it wasn't just that, but also looking at the managing directors, which is kind of the highest up you can go in the investment banking world. And these guys were making $1 million a year, but they were still coming in at 8, not leaving until 10 p.m. every single day. And so kind of was lost after that. Didn't really know what I wanted to do going into my senior year, and was fortunate enough to get into a class called Intro to Real Estate at the University of Kentucky. And it was kind of a unique class because it wasn't taught by a normal professor. It was actually taught by a guy by the name of Jonah Mitchell. He's a adjunct professor, which basically means he's not a full-time teacher. He just teaches this one class and has a full-time career outside of that. So he we met every Wednesday from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. And outside of school, he actually was a full-time real estate guy. So he owned his own property management company, owned his own brokerage, owned a large portfolio of rental properties. And sitting in his class and learning from him was the first time where I sat in a class and I inspired and wanted to be like the professor, because by all means, he'd made it. He lived in what I perceived as a mansion. He was his own boss. He was financially free. And it wasn't like he was some super genius. He just worked really hard on his craft for a very long period of time and made it. And that's what sparked the interest. I wouldn't say I necessarily wanted to go into real estate full time at that point, but I definitely wanted to invest part time at least. Started consuming a lot of content, education, mainly Bigger Pockets at that time, listening to their podcast. And actually in the winter break over in my senior year, I was networking in some real estate groups and actually reached out and posted my resume on the Facebook group and said, hey, I'm really interested in real estate. I want to intern for somebody. I feel like I understand the number side of the business, but I have no idea how to swing a hammer. I have no idea how construction works. I'll come mow grass, paint for free if you just let me shadow you while you flip a house or renovate a house. I had a few people reach out, but the most compelling was actually a guy by the name of Scott Pennebaker, who was a successful entrepreneur outside of real estate there in Lexington. Him and his partners owned a company that bought and sold used college textbooks nationwide. They made a lot of money from that, and they were taking those profits and investing them in single-family rental properties there in Lexington. And up to that point, they had bought all their deals just from realtors on the market, but they were wanting to go direct to seller. And so,
How long ago was this?
This was early 2018.
Early 2018. So before we continue, I want to ask you just a couple of quick questions.
Yeah.
So first, investment banking. That's what we're talking about, right? So we're like going up intern for like Goldman Sachs kind of organizations.
It was a middle market bank. I applied to a lot of investment banks. Most of them do not hire from SEC schools. They're looking at the Harvards and Yales of the world. So I networked really, really hard. I mean, even at that, to get that position that I got, I probably sent over 3 or 4,000 cold emails. I wasn't brave enough to cold call people yet, but I was sending cold emails and just networked my way into that position.
But that was what you were studying.
Yeah.
And then when you got there, it wasn't the work itself, but the culture that was a turn off.
It was the culture, and the work itself was also just very not interesting.
Okay.
You don't really get into the actual numbers until you're pretty high up in the organization. I was essentially a glorified PowerPoint creator. That's all I did all day was format and make PowerPoints look
Got it.
the best they could.
And then the other thing you're talking about was the adjunct professor.
Yeah.
Right? And it's fascinating because it's cool that you got to meet a professor that's actually doing it. And one of the complaints I have, right, with at least the education side, is I have a bunch of people teaching us business that have never ran a business before.
Yeah. Oh, very true.
Right.
Very
So
true.
it's really cool that you had the opportunity to learn from someone that's actually in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So you're going back. Okay. You're working with.
Yeah. So we're working, just interning for them. They started sending some direct mail, and I was the one answering the phone calls like in between classes and going on appointments with Scott to look at the houses. And we actually, this is back in 2018 before it got extremely competitive, and we actually had a ton of traction from those first few direct mail campaigns. And we had more deals sitting in front of us than they even wanted to buy. I know what to do with them. We're like, these are good deals. We shouldn't just let them go to waste. Since we're like, let's try this wholesale thing.
Mm-hmm.
We downloaded an assignment contract from some online website, and we were actually able to close a few pretty good sized wholesale deals right before I graduated in June of 2018. And up to that point, I already had a position I was planning to go to in wealth management. I didn't think there was anything here for me full time in the wholesale side, but they sent me down. Those partners sent me down right before I graduated and said, hey, we think there might be something here. We don't have a lot of time. We're managing this textbook company. But if you want to spearhead this and try to build something out of this wholesale business, it'll be 100% commission, but we'll back you. We'll put the money behind the marketing. And so I jumped at that opportunity, and that's kind of how I got into real estate. I was building a business for someone else. Changed a lot since then, but that's kind of how I got my.
And they were buying predominantly from realtors, you said?
Yeah, up until that point.
They were buying predominantly from realtors, had too many deals.
Yeah, exactly.
And they started wholesaling.
Exactly. So we sent this, it was probably 5 or 6 direct mail campaigns of like 5,000 letters.
Yeah.
And we were getting 2 or 3% response rates and just a ton of deals throwing at us.
Slightly different time.
Slightly different time. Very different time. Yeah.
Okay. So who was handling the wholesale? They were or you were? I
was. So basically, they brought me on full time right after I graduated in June 2018 to build a wholesale business.
Got it.
Because their time was really invested in managing the textbook company.
So let's walk through that very first deal. Because again, like this is exploratory. Like you didn't even know if wholesale was going to work for you guys.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that very first transaction you guys did.
To be honest, I don't even remember because I was kind of doing it part time there for a little bit. So I would only see parts of each deal. I would either answer the phone call or go in the appointment, but then they would handle it from there. When I think the first deal I really ever did was actually a rental property I bought.
Mm-hmm.
That was literally the week after I graduated. And it was a pretty cool situation. A burnout landlord had posted a list like 45 properties on this Facebook page saying, hey, I need some money to go renovate this big apartment complex. I'll sell any of these. It was an Excel sheet with the address, bed, bath count, what it's rented for, and the price. He posted it at like 6:00 on a Wednesday. And this was right when I kind of figured out how I was going to buy my first property after talking to some banks. And so that night I dug in and basically ran my own little appraisal on all 46 properties. I was up to like 3 a.m. because I wanted to figure out if there's any of these worth buying because they were in good areas. I identified 5 that should, right when you buy it, have at least 25% immediate equity easily. And they were all, right at the 1% rule or better. And I came to my boss then, Scott, and said, hey, I think these are worth going after. And I think if we try to buy 5 of them, we can maybe even get them for a discount than what he's asking. It's kind of a package deal.
Yep.
And, you all can have 4 of them because I know you're still looking to buy properties. Can I buy 1? And he said yes. And so that's how I got my very first one. Is a little 4-bed, 1-bath, Cape Cod style house. It was awesome. It was probably the best deal I've ever done. It was already rented for $850 a month, but the tenant was 100% on Section 8, taking good care of the property. And we bought it for $70,000. And the plan was just to do an immediate refinance out. We bought it cash. And what most people don't know is with Section 8, especially if the tenant's not really paying any of the money, you can request a rent raise every year. Well, that landlord hadn't done it for 4 years. So even before we closed, I was like, I'm just going to take a shot at it.
Mhm.
And then I sent a rent raise request to $1,150 a month, even though the market rates over there are like 900. And they said, no, you're crazy. We'll do 1,000. I was like, awesome. So I got a $150 rent raise right before we even closed. And so that house, we bought it for 70. We didn't put a dime into it. Already had a tenant in place, renting for $1,000 a month. And literally the next week, I went to a local bank, said, hey, I want to refinance this. I said, we'll give you 80% of what it appraises for. And an appraiser go out and appraise for $100,000. We could have pulled $10,000 out above what we had into it, but we were trying to be a little conservative. And first deal. So that very first deal, I partnered with my dad. So
Got it.
I was 100% commission of 1099.
This is before you got married.
Yeah. Way before that. Yeah.
Okay. So you were spearheading this wholesaling operation.
Yes.
Those guys now, are they more wholesaling or textbook company?
So their textbook company essentially went bankrupt in COVID. They relied on going and meeting with professors and
that makes
face
sense.
to face.
Yeah.
To buy the textbooks from professors.
Unfortunate.
So, very unfortunate. So they're very focused on real estate now. They do a lot of wholesale. They're a big competitor of ours in the Lexington market.
Well, I mean, they kind of saw what was possible.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're helping them run this organization. How long were you in that seat, helping them with the wholesaling before you said, you know what, guys, thanks for everything. I'm off on my own.
Yeah. So I was started June 2018 full time. Those first 6 months, we were just figuring things out, not doing much of anything besides learning what doesn't work. And then in 2018, we kind of figured out what works, and we hired a few people. And 2019 was my only full year with them, and we did just over 100 wholesale deals, right at $1 million in assignment revenue. But towards the end of that, I didn't want to see. I wanted to be a partner in the business. I felt like I was the captain of the ship, but they weren't open to give me any sort of equity in the business. As well as we kind of had some differences on what the next step was for growth, and that lined up with my then fiance, now wife, Kristen. Getting into vet school down at Auburn University in Auburn, Alabama. So everything kind of aligned for me to jump down there and start my own thing in Montgomery. That's how I moved down there end of 2019.
Okay, so difference of opinion, difference in values, or a difference in opinion of your value.
Yeah.
Difference of opinion in the vision.
Yep.
And you were moving anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So you go off on your own. So 2020 is your first full year.
Yeah, first full year on my own.
Okay, because I think I met you in Collective Genius. I think I met you, I want to say our first in-person meeting was like maybe September.
December 2020.
Oh, it was December.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. It was December. It was right before Christmas.
Down in Clearwater. Yep.
So that was you're wrapping up your first full year. Because I was like, man, like this kid's got like a really bright future. Obviously, we're well past bright future. You're living it. But I remember like just thinking like this kid's got a really bright future. So let's talk about that journey. What was your very first year like? Especially you got to, experience it during COVID.
Yeah, well, that's fun. We're in Alabama, so
COVID didn't really
was
happen.
like 3 weeks long. But
it's pretty much how it was here in Arizona.
Yeah, exactly. So that didn't affect much, but yeah, learned a lot going on my own. It's very difficult going somewhere. I didn't know anyone. I didn't know a single buyer, anybody at all. And establishing those relationships right away. And then that first full year, 2020, it was just me and me, Eric, and one other employee who's an acquisition sales rep. I think we did right at 65, 70 deals, right at 700,000 in revenue. And going into that December 2020 CG meeting, we were kind of, thinking, oh, man, we're the top dogs here in Montgomery. We're going to go in here. Maybe we'll learn some stuff from some guys, but we'll also probably teach some people too. Mm-hmm. And we walk in there and it feels like it's a room full of sharks and we're this little minnow, like, oh my gosh. But it also, what that really did for us was, we thought up to that point that the most deals you could ever do in Montgomery, it's 400,000 metro population was, maybe 85, 95, maybe 100 deals in a really good year. And then we go walk in there and we see, people like Eric Brewer doing 400 deals in York, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. You see Irby doing 100 plus deals in each of their small little markets. And it really changed our mindset of what's possible. And that is what empowered us to go back and say, all right, we are going to turn the dial up on marketing. We are going to hire more people and there's going to be a return. It's not going to be for nothing. And that's what allowed us to have a really great 2021 and actually do 152 deals just in that Montgomery office.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Well, and you talk about, right, like you felt like you were the top dog and you went over there and you learned a little bit of humility, right?
Oh, big time.
And I kind of made the joke earlier. I was on a coaching call and I kind of shared like, well, we won't be doing any coaching calls next week because I'm going to get humbled next week.
Yeah.
Right.
Every time I go, we get a big slice of humble pie.
Yeah, it's like, man, they're doing what? How's that possible? And you ask, and so like it's really cool. Like for those guys that are listening to the show, right? You're hearing all these guys are doing really big things. We're sitting in a room and like everyone's kicking our butts.
Yeah,
So it's always a good experience.
it is. It really is.
Okay, so then what were the big things that you guys did in 2020 that helped you guys a lot
In 2020,
in 2020?
in 2020,
Or what lessons did you learn along the way?
we learned some lessons. At that point, I feel like we're a real company now. Back then, it just felt like it was 3 dudes just wheeling, dealing deals all day. No structure, hardly any processes or systems. But we figured out who the players were in the market. We figured out a few marketing strategies that worked in our market. And that was about it for 2020. Just getting up and working hard every day was what empowered us to do those deals. It wasn't really any sort of structure or process for that.
Yeah. And then you said you went from 70 something to 140 something?
Yeah. So in just the Montgomery office, we went from just at 70 deals in 2020 to 152 closed in 2021.
Okay, so more than double your operation. So you felt like you were the big dog,
Yeah.
and then you more than doubled your production.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the key things you guys did to help you grow so much in 2021?
Yeah, I think I like to say that we came up with some kind of cool new strategy or process, but it really was just a lot of stuff that that we learned in those quarterly meetings and taking those back and implementing them. The number one thing was really just having the confidence because we already had a small amount of structure, a good CRM, a few good processes and systems, but having the confidence to go in and actually say, all right, we are going to hire 2 more acquisition sales reps. We are going to hire a dedicated inside sales rep. We're going to hire a full-time transaction manager, and we're going to increase our marketing budget from $10,000 a month to $40,000 a month. And learned a lot of lessons along the way by doing those things, and had good fits, bad fits on the people side. That was the number one thing, is just realizing that we weren't going to hire these people and turn the marketing up and then just have to fire them all because there's no more deals to be had.
Right.
Just realizing how deep you can go in an individual market. That was the number one reason I think we were able to have as much success as we did in 2021.
So basically, seeing a similar blueprint as far as organization structure, and going back and executing it, and then also having the confidence / courage, because it takes a little bit of that, to start spending $40,000 a month.
Yeah.
So realizing if A, we need to hire the right people, and then B, once we hire the right people, we need to increase marketing.
Yep.
Okay. What were some of the big marketing things you guys were doing in order to scale? Because 40,000 is not. What's the word I'm looking for? There's a lot of different opportunities when you're spending that much.
Yeah.
What were some of the biggest, most effective marketing channels you guys are doing?
Yeah. So some of the same stuff we're doing today. Direct mail always has been good for us, just turning up the amount and volume we're sending there. We started doing TV with Darren and Bullseye Branding, and that's worked phenomenal. And that's a big chunk of that 40. And as well as just ramping up the level of cold calling and texting we were doing. Before we had 1 full-time cold caller. Now we have 10 full-time cold callers. Well, 5 dedicated to the Montgomery market. So a lot of it was just taking something that maybe gave us like 2 leads a week and saying, all right, we're going to ramp it up and make this actually be a lead source that produces for us and not just something that's kind of a distraction.
Yeah.
But those are the big things: is TV, direct mail, texting, and cold calling.
Okay. And so it's 150 something transactions in Montgomery.
Yes.
And then you said Lexington's the other market?
Yeah, Lexington's the other market right now. That's the market I already knew. I'd kind of built a business there. And when my non-compete ran out in late 2020, I started that office, and really took a while for it to get going, get some momentum. But in 2021, that office did right at 50 deals, I think 700,000 in revenue. And then they've been the big growth story this year. And they're knocking it. They're crushing it this year so far.
What do you attribute that to?
Again, it was up to that point, there's only 1 or 2 guys, and now we've got a full team up there. We've got 3 acquisition sales reps, a disposition sales rep, a transaction manager, an inside sales rep, and an office manager. Whereas, in 2021, it was 2 employees.
Okay. Because it was, you started late of 2020.
It started late 2020. We kind of, I was focused a lot on the Montgomery business. It was kind of, I would say it's on the back burner of my mind most of the time. And then once we got the structure and the people in place in Montgomery, I was able to devote more time to building Lexington and recreating what we had in Montgomery in Lexington towards the end of 2021.
Got it. So I know people are really curious at how you did all this, and I want to leave this part to the Q&A session because we have a lot of people watching right now. So I guess let me ask you a different question. Most people that come on this show, when they first are getting into real estate, they've got a lot of adversity, hurdles, getting hit with haymakers, right? It seems like this was really easy for you.
Not at all.
So what were some of the early struggles you faced in growing your business?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of them. I think a lot of people issues. When you first start out, you don't know how to hire. You hire someone that's similar to you that you get along with, that may not be right for that position. And so it's a lot of uncomfortable conversations and a lot of bad hires. One of our biggest lessons I had was, one of the guys that was that third person in 2020, he was a rock star acquisition sales rep. And he just top performer, 2021, continued to be a top performer, started to notice some ego issues, some things he was saying in the office that weren't good. It got worse and worse and worse. I didn't really know what to do about it because he was still performing. What do you do about that? And, I learned from CG, but I let that progress way too long. And, he was kind of like a little cancer that was infecting not just himself, but everyone. And it got to the point where we'd be on a sales training call, and I would just see him rolling his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to him after, and he says, well, some people have to learn how to sell. Some people it's just natural. I said, they need to learn. I don't need to learn,
Yeah, I'm above it.
It comes natural. I'm just a natural salesman. I'm like, no. And I still didn't fire him. Because he was performing, and it really hurt our culture. And that was a really, really tough time for us. A lot of arguments in the office. And
arguments with him in the argument, or arguments about him?
Arguments with him with other people, him with me with other people about him. It just a lot of drama.
A lot of antagonism.
Yeah, exactly. And eventually, despite him still performing, I had to let him go. And, you're worried about that because he was also really good friends with some of the people on our team, some of the top performers on our team that I didn't want to lose. And let him go. And I thought it was going to be upheaval, but it was thank you the next day. And there's still some corrective action we had to take, but I just realized, man, I should have done this like 3-4 months ago. Why did I wait so long? That was a really challenging time for us. And that was one of the big failures or kind of things I learned from. Besides that, there's been a lot of stuff here and there.
Well, and I think for that, there's a lot of fear, right? If this guy's our top dog, right? Like how much money we're going to lose.
Yeah.
And I believe it's an understandable fear, but like, was it Jim Collins talks about in From Good to Great is like the moment you let one of those people go, everyone else is appreciative.
Yeah.
Right. And you got to experience that.
I did. And it happened just like they said it does, which just surprised me because I was so worried and so much fear, but
yeah. So just for perspective sake, what kind of volume was he bringing in? Because it's easy to say like, they're doing a deal a month. Like we can let him go, right?
Yeah. He was let go in September of 2021. September of 2020 to September 2021, he had brought in over $1 million in revenue.
Yeah. So that is $1 million in revenue is kind of hard to walk out the door. And I will share, like just me personally, in some of the toughest conversations, right? Is everyone saying we need to let this person go?
Yeah.
Like this person's bringing in a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually when you do let them go, everyone there's a lot less stress and it's more fun again.
Exactly. That experience it firsthand. But it is difficult for sure.
So a lot of bad hires. So one thing that you kind of touched on, just for everyone else that's listening, because everyone's in different seasons in their career here. You were hiring people that weren't a good fit for the role.
Mm-hmm.
Is that accurate?
That was accurate. Weren't a good fit for the role. A lot of people that I got along with, and that was like, man, well, they don't have the right predictive index. They don't have the right personality. Like, I could see it working. I get along with them. Like, I could hang out with this guy, and it just doesn't work.
No, we can't hire people that are like you.
Yeah,
because if they're like you, they're probably not going to be good at the job.
Exactly.
It's
hard.
At least that's been my experience. If they're too similar to me, then they're probably not going to be good at doing what I need them to do because I don't want them to do stuff that I don't want to do.
Yeah, that's very true. A lot of that happened. But
okay, so what did you do to improve that?
Yeah, so I brought a lot of good people into the business. I think for me, a big part of the problem was I did not have enough time to focus on it.
Focus on hiring?
On hiring specifically, and coming with a good framework and how to do that, and actually devoting time. A lot of the bad hires we had was, we've had this Indeed posting out for 2 months. We need this person really bad. Everyone on 0 to 10 has been like a 3 so far. This person's a 5. Like, I think we should hire him. There's never going to be a 10. It's because I wasn't putting the effort in, because I didn't have time to focus on it. And now it's been one of the biggest drivers to our growth here recently is we hired a full-time director of human capital, and all he does all day is recruit and hire people. And I think our team has doubled in size in the last 6 months since he's joined. So not having focus on it was a big part of that.
Director of human capital. That sounds like something Ren would say.
Yeah, I learned it from CG. A lot of them have director of human capitals, chief people officer, whatever you want to call it. I mean, someone who's devoted to that full time has been a big help for us.
Awesome. Okay, so hiring this person. So you didn't necessarily execute the hiring part, but you brought in a person whose responsibility is to execute the hiring part.
Exactly. Yeah, it's something I always hiring. Processing job applications and talking to people and interviewing. It always felt like a suck on my time, like it was draining to me. And now I'm just there for the very final interview, and that's it. And it's so much more, it's so much better. And he's brought in great people every time so far. His record's 100% so far. We'll see if that holds true. But yeah.
And so I took strategic coach a long time ago. So that was something Dan Sullivan talks about, right? Is hiring the right person. Yep. And then Ben Hardy, if you guys haven't read Who Not How, I finally read the book because I've had people push it so many times. But like, I already went through the training, but fine, I read the book, right? Yeah. But it sounds like that's what you did. You hired the right who, and now his job is to find other who's.
Yeah, exactly. That's dead on. Who Not How.
So all right, so that was personnel was your biggest challenge, one of your biggest challenges. What other major struggles have you experienced going from brand new to city you've never been before? Getting there 500,000 a month.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that's the only really big hurdle. We have small hurdles every day. We have deals that blow up. We have what seems like the end of the world happen. It seems every month, but we work through it every time. I can't think of anything specific. I mean, it's just a lot of small iterations and changes and breaking things. One of our core values as a company is we Kaizen. So Kaizen is a Japanese term. It means continuous improvement. And we really, really live that. So we are never complacent. We are always trying to break things. And so we are just in a constant state of change. And I think that's been a big contributor to it so far.
So just real quick for, reference, right? Kaizen, Kaizen.
Yep.
Right. And that's basically what we learned from what the Japanese did with when their auto industry improved, right? When Japanese auto engineering surpassed American engineering.
Yeah.
Right. So Kaizen.
Yep.
So you guys practice it. So give me an example, right? So because it does feel like the world's always constantly falling apart, right? So someone's upset, process is broken. What is the team's process then for practicing Kaizen?
Yeah, we'll after that we'll have a meeting. This is for example, if a deal blows up. Recently we had one of these. It's a big apartment complex deal that fell apart. We were wholesaling. And we had an after action report meeting where all the people that were involved in that deal came together for 30 minutes. We list out all the problems that we ran into. We list out what the key root of each of those problems are. And then we list out all of the corrective actions or changes that we're going to make. And then everyone spends the next 30 minutes going back and making those changes. So, this deal blew apart for a number of reasons.
Well, let's talk about that specific deal.
Yeah, so this is a 10-unit apartment building in Montgomery that we're going to buy and then resell to a buyer we already had locked up. The first thing was the seller was fairly difficult to work with. During the middle of our process, our due diligence process, he left and went to Thailand. He was going to be in Thailand for 2 months. And closing in Thailand is difficult. You can't there's no notaries in Thailand. You have to go to the U.S. Embassy. You have to schedule that. It's got to be 2 weeks out. He was already really mad about that because he wanted to close today. There's a lot of problems with getting in with the current tenants. His property management was in shambles, and all that got put onto us. There's also confusion everything was separately metered, so we just assumed that the tenants pay their own utilities. Well, so this is what probably we actually closed on. We buy it. The next day, our phones are blowing up because everyone's water's been turned off. The owner never let us know. He told us verbally, we had notes and on the call that they pay their own utilities, but no, we didn't have it in writing. So what was the corrective action? We now have in writing on our contract, like if a tenant occupied property, who pays utilities, and it has water, gas, electric, and they have to fill that out because that happened and it was a nightmare. And tenants blowing us up, no water, no power. So a lot of stuff like that happens all the time.
All right. So guys out of the country, right? So what was the root problem there?
He was a difficult seller and he wanted to close like right now. And he was confused as far as he thought he could, he thought like a Thailand notary would work or something like that.
Right.
But in order to do a closing with someone who's in an international country, at least in Thailand, you have to go to the U.S. Embassy and you have to schedule it through their website, and they don't have many slots for that. So the earliest slot they had, they were supposed to close on May 2nd. The earliest slot we had, I think, was May 23rd.
But I guess my question is, what is the fix now, right? So we identified the problem. So next time we have an international
seller, our transaction manager just knows. It's not like something we really have on a contract or anything, but she knows that to expect that hurdle, we have it, because we actually had a few other ones happen like that.
Right.
And she knows to expect that going forward. For that issue at least.
Okay, I was just curious because it is an interesting scenario, right? Because you said like there's no notaries, like no, of course there are. You just go to the embassy, but now we know also that the embassy is 2 weeks out.
Yeah, or at least you just got to check. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So we're talking about 100, or we're talking about the volume. So you also own 150 rentals.
Yeah. So most of those are in Lexington. That's where it got started, and it's mainly single family and small multifamily properties. I think the largest I have is like a 6-plex. And almost all of those have been acquired using the BRRRR strategy. So even when I moved down to Montgomery, I was continuing to buy properties up in Lexington, off market, and burning them and keeping them myself.
Yeah. So the BRRRR strategy is working really well for you.
Yeah.
Okay. It's one of the things I'm envious of, right? Of everyone that comes in from the Midwest.
Yeah.
They get to do the BRRRR thing. It's not quite the same in Phoenix.
Yeah. Well, Lexington prices are getting pretty crazy. At this point, like I'm just looking to make like $1,500 a month cash flow on these deals. If that really, if they can just break even, they're kind of little forced savings accounts for me.
All right.
But it's not like it used to be.
So, but this is how you're able to bankroll your rental portfolio, or how you were able to build your rental portfolio.
Yeah, it's how I was able to build it. Doing the BRRRR strategy allows a small amount of capital to have a lot of velocity and recycle over and over again. And after a few of those, really starting to rely on private lenders. So really all of these deals, I have no money invested in at all. Relationships with a few local private lenders there in Lexington, and they'll fund 100% of the purchase and rehab. We'll get the deal rehabbed, contact a local bank to get it refinanced, pay them off. I've got a property that's cash flowing a little bit, but the real beauty is I have no money invested in it too. So every month that debt pay down, as well as the tax benefits, really help out a lot.
So as far as what did I want to ask? Shoot, I had a follow-up question for that. Oh, what percentage of properties do you have a strategy, like, because you're sourcing deals, obviously. Do you have a specific strategy for every 3 I wholesale, I'm keeping 1? Is there like, if we get a property and it hits these boxes, then for sure we're keeping it? What strategy do you have on determining what properties you're building your rental portfolio? Yeah,
it's changed a lot over time. I used to be, I just want to buy anything that I can remotely afford and just buy. Bought a lot of stuff that was probably C- class stuff, and you realize that the numbers look really good on paper. When you get those C- class tenants in there and the damage they do and the rent that they don't pay, you realize that what's on paper doesn't really add up to what's reality.
There's not a box for like how much you have to spend remodeling because the tenants are difficult. There's not that field.
There's not at all, but you see it on the tax return. You see it on the bank account every month.
Yeah.
And so, recently actually kind of shifted focus. Used to be just buying everything that I could, that made sense, that could potentially cash flow. And then anything that was more of a flip property, we'd wholesale. Now I actually recently, after that last CG meeting with Alistair, I and him kind of talking about where the economy is most likely headed, I actually recently just sold off 33 units that were all the lower class stuff that has doubled in value in the last 3 years, despite still not really cash flowing. And now I'm purely focused on buying stuff in the city limits of Lexington, none of the suburbs like I was before, and B class or better properties.
Yeah.
And so I've slowed down the amount of deals I bought a lot, as well as now that we've built the wholesale business up there where they really have a structure. I'm not allowed to steal deals from the company, right? I've got to run every single deal that comes across my plate through the company. And I follow the same policies as all the other employees in the company as far as being able to buy deals from the company. We have a policy that we encourage our employees to buy rental properties. We want them to do that. A number of our employees have. They get first access to any deal that comes through our system. And there's a discount policy where the first rental property they buy in a given year, they get a 25% discount to the assignment fee of what we were going to put it out at and market it at. And then for every consecutive deal after that, that discount declines by 5%. And even after they bought 5, if they want to keep buying them, they still get first access. They just have to pay full price. And that resets every year. So I follow that same strategy in Lexington, which is also part of the reason that I've slowed down a little bit, because I've got to tack on that assignment fee for myself as well. But that's kind of strategy now.
Yeah. And then someone in here was asking what CG was. So yeah, CG is just collective genius. So we're both in the same mastermind, which we're going to be hanging out again actually next week.
That's right.
And we even play basketball.
Yeah, I was there one day. I'm going to come down and play a little bit more this time. It's a lot of fun.
So I don't know how it's going to go. I hurt my knee a couple of weeks ago. So we're going to see how that goes. Another thing too is, this is totally selfish here on my part, but, got a chance to talk to Eric last time, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he shared with me like the coolest story. He's like, hey, Steve, just want to let you know, I was able to buy the car I had my eyes on. So you know the story. Yeah,
well, Eric Martin's our COO. He's been dreaming of buying a Tesla ever since I met him back in college. It's his dream car. It's always been his dream car.
So you go back to college with him?
Yeah. He's been with Eric for a long time. He actually interned at the company I used to work at. So and then worked there as well. But he's always wanted a Tesla. And I remember the very first CG meeting. We met Steve at the bar before the first day that night, and Eric was in awe because you owned a Tesla. And I remember him making a comment. You were like, "Oh, just buy one. Just buy one." And Eric was like, "He told me just to buy one." I was like, "I don't know if I have the money to do that right now." But now, we've had a lot of success. A lot of that's because we're listening every single week to the Steve sales training. We've got our acquisition sales reps on it. We've got our lead managers on the new training. And also just learning from the Disruptors podcast. That's been huge so far. And here recently, he was actually able to, I think 2 months ago, or a month and a half ago, bought his dream car. It's a tricked out Model 3 performance. And it's pretty scary to be in because that thing flies. And now he's got the full self-driving, and he trusts Elon a lot more than I do. But yeah, it was a dream fulfilled for sure.
Yeah, and it's the exact same car I have, right? So it's that car is incredibly fun. I'm actually looking right now for another car because the supply chain issues. Like my lease ends at the end of the year.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, I better start looking now.
Yeah.
All right, and I've been looking, and the thing that's crazy is there's not a car I want to buy. Like
it's not the Tesla.
That Model 3 is the best car you can buy. Like I can't find anything better.
It was pretty phenomenal.
So let's see here, guys. Let's definitely jump in some questions here. And before we jump into that, guys, we do have our all-day sales training coming up in a couple of months. If you guys are interested in checking that out, go to disruptors.com/sales disruptors. It's a day and a half. We go over everything we just talked about here, right? So we go over our process that 60 of the top members, right, investors in the country are entrusting us to teach them. We go over that, and you'll have all the confidence, the mindset, the tools you're going to need to be able to buy houses at a higher margin, more consistently, and they'll show up in the closing day. Because that's one of the biggest problems is they'll sign contracts and they don't show up.
We've had that issue a lot. We've had to get some lawyers involved.
Yeah, so we go over how we do that. So let's go ahead and jump into this. So the first question, and it's going to be a longer question,
okay,
right, is how are you doing $500,000 a month? So I said that I wanted to leave this up to these guys. So what are the major 2 or 3 things that you're doing that's effective to help you get to $500,000 a month? Because most people don't make that in a matter of years.
Yeah. Well, that's top line too. We're not netting $500,000 a month. The key really for us, Montgomery this year is not necessarily growing much more than it did last year. We have a little bit of growth, but Lexington's taken off a lot. We're implementing the same structure and systems and processes that we had in Montgomery and Lexington, and they're kind of competing every month. So, this last month was kind of a rough month for Montgomery. I think they did like 155,000. Kentucky went off and did 350. And the month before it was 275 in Montgomery and like 175 in Kentucky. So they kind of trade places. And it's been nice so far. There's not been one where they're both down. It's either one's down, one's up. But really having that second market has been a big reason we've been able to achieve the 500,000 a month. I think another big thing is, we follow the EOS and traction, and the beginning of this year, we had a big annual meeting, and we laid out what our goals were going to be. And our goals for this year is $6 million in revenue, 400 deals, and we laid out exactly how that what we needed to do to make that happen. And one of the key things was to get the Lexington office up to the same scale and structure as Montgomery. So that was what our core quarterly rocks for Q1 were tied to, and we made that happen. And now we're seeing those results Q2 and Q3 with the Kentucky office really starting to perform. So really just having proper planning, that's another thing where we realized at the beginning of the year, if we want to achieve the 400 deals a year and $6 million in revenue, we're going to be at 35 employees by the end of the year. We had 12 full-time employees January 1st. I was like, I'm not hiring that many people. I'm horrible at hiring. I hate doing it. So we realized we need to hire someone who full-time hires and recruits people. And so just planning that out, knowing where you want to be at the end of the year and planning that out on a quarterly basis has been the key to us being able to achieve the 500,000 a month.
Okay. So I'm hearing the sitting back planning and then executing that plan.
Yep, exactly.
All right. So that's one thing. The other thing we talked about earlier was, advertising on TV and direct mail is a big piece of your success.
Yeah.
So you're on TV in Lexington and Montgomery?
Both markets, yes. So both markets, we pretty much do all the marketing you can do. We have 2 full-time texters. We have 10 full-time cold callers. We're doing TV with Darren in both markets. We're sending a lot of direct mail in both markets. Our overarching marketing budget's about $95,000 to $100,000 a month total between the 2 markets. So that's a big reason why we're getting to 500. If you're not spending the marketing dollars, it's hard to get to those high revenue numbers.
Sure, that makes total sense. Is there anything else? Because that's 2 things, right? So marketing and then the planning and executing. What's the third thing that you would say was instrumental to getting to 500,000 a month?
I think the last big thing is just being a lot better about training and onboarding. Before it was kind of someone would come on and it would be like, all right, your acquisitions. So this is our other acquisitions guys. You're just going to shadow him all day, every day. And hopefully you'll pick it up, eventually. We'll just start throwing your own appointments here in a few weeks. But now we've got a whole build out system where we're from day one, getting them plugged into our, we use Trainual, it's a software platform to get people onboarded and trained. And we've got, their first 30 days mapped out of, hey, you're listening to Steve Trang's, all of his modules. You're taking the Chris Voss masterclass. You're going through our internal training on running comps, running ARV, and we even have an exam that they take at the end of those 30 days. And they're not allowed to go on appointments on their own until they pass that exam. This is just for the acquisitions. So building out training a lot better so that those acquisition reps can come online and start performing a lot quicker.
Yeah, onboarding is so key. I still remember, and it's embarrassing because there are times that we don't onboard very well, right? It still happens from time to time. Not as bad as it used to be. But I still remember my very first day at Intel.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
They're paying me like a real salary, right?
Yeah.
And I show up and I'm like, yeah, I don't know where your boss is at. Right? Just sit in the queue.
Really?
We'll figure this out later on.
Have that figured out better?
No.
Oh my goodness.
Right?
Okay, well, it's not just us. The big companies too.
No, the big companies have similar challenges as well. So it's so key, right? Because it's also the first impression of your company for anyone that joins your organization.
Oh, it's huge, and we do a lot with that now. After we, again going back to CG, but hearing Ren's presentation a few quarters ago, we're talking about what they do. So do the same thing. We send you if you're joining our company, you get a survey before you start. We found out all of your favorite snacks and drinks and everything. And when you start day one, you have swag everywhere, your favorite snacks, your favorite drink. We're taking you out to your favorite restaurant. The whole company is for lunch on that very first day to know everyone. We want that impression to be amazing, and we want to make sure that you're immediately embedded into the team and the training right away.
Indoctrination begins from day one.
Exactly.
So on Instagram, Realty Ilya, how do you find your deals? I think we already answered that one. How do you think, this is Remington on YouTube, how do you think wholesale will be affected if the economy goes the way you mentioned it may go?
It's definitely something I think we're all thinking about a lot right now.
Oh, it's going to be fine.
Yeah, that's what I hope. But, we're seeing inventory levels starting to creep up. Interest rates are continuing to rise. I think just today the Fed increased the federal funds rate by 75 basis points.
0.75.
The largest since 1994 of that large of a raise at a given time.
It's a massive jump.
It is, and it's scary. I try not to think that I know too much in this space because I've only been in real estate in the good times since 2018. I really don't know. I try to talk to those that have been through the cycles, that have seen it. And the one thing for us is obviously real estate's very local, so we're monitoring our local MLS data every single month, making sure prices are continuing to appreciate or stay level, making sure the inventory levels are staying low. Both of our markets, we're still below 2 months of inventory, so we're feeling strong right now. But the one thing for wholesale, at least my theory, I've not put it to the test yet, but we'll see here shortly, maybe. We're not flippers. We don't have a lot of inventory. So I like to think that we're going to move with the market.
Mm-hmm.
So if people were paying 100 and we were getting it for 80, well, now they're only willing to pay 90. Well, we'll get it for 70. And so here recently, actually, we locked up a lot of deals in Montgomery, and we very rarely back out of deals. But we had a lot of deals that recently they were a little bit more difficult to move. We were pushing our prices a bit, but because of that, we went ahead and now our whole team, we changed the formula for what they're offering at. So they were, we think we can move stuff for 80% of ARV minus repairs. Now it's 75% of minus repairs. So we're already making that adjustment. Hopefully that our margins don't shrink. So we're trying to take that action to make sure that doesn't happen. But we're monitoring it every month. I think for me personally, I think we've just been in a very hyper aggressive market in the last few years. And so now that things aren't selling for over asking in the first 24 hours, and you're not getting 20 offers, people are freaking out. But you've got to remember that it hasn't always been that way. And it hasn't 2016, 2017, 2018, it wasn't like that. Right. The market was still fine. You're still getting your asking price. It just took 30 days instead of 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So hopefully it just normalizes, I think is the term going around that we're all hoping.
Yeah. We might all have to work a little bit harder.
Yeah.
But we're going to be fine as long as we're running a good business. So I think it will be an interesting meeting next week, though.
I think it will too.
I think it's very timely.
It is.
And one thing I like to do, if you guys aren't watching my other channel, if you just go just the Steve Trang YouTube channel, what I like to do also is interview people at CG, right?
Oh, yeah.
Ask them questions. So if you guys have not been watching that channel, you guys are definitely going to want to check that out because that's going to be the key question.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of knowledgeable guys that have been through some cycles there. I would definitely pay attention to that.
So I get to play reporter in the scene over there too. All right. The other question on Instagram, this is Zoram. Now the market shifted, we're on the way down. Where are you doing the pivot? So I think that's probably more of a question for you than it's a question for me. So what are you doing to pivot?
I think the pivot, like we said, we're declining, decreasing the what we're offering on the front end, changing those formulas so that when we do go to sell those properties, our margins aren't being compressed. So like I said, we're trying to move with the market. It's kind of an art, but that's.
But you're right though. Like being a wholesale, we get to do that.
Yeah,
right?
We don't have any inventory looming on the balance sheet.
Yeah, the biggest challenge we're going to have is the time it takes for the sellers to realize that the market has shifted. And the good news is we're hearing for the most part, sellers are aware. The bad news has started. Like they're not protecting this president as much as they might have been earlier. Yeah. So I'm looking right now on YouTube. I see 104 people watching, but only 25 thumbs up. So guys, if you guys are watching, that's the cost, right? Just hit the thumbs up. Okay, so Isaiah on YouTube, what does your wholesale operation look like today?
Yeah, so we've got, I think we're at 20 employees full-time in the office. We also have some virtual assistants and cold callers, but I can go by office by office. Montgomery, we've got 4 acquisition sales reps, 3 inside sales reps. One of those is kind of going to help. They're going to help with the Columbus office as well once it's open, but 4 acquisition sales reps, 3 inside sales reps. We've got a disposition sales rep, transaction manager, office manager, and then a director of human capital, COO Eric, myself. And up in Kentucky, we've got 3 acquisition sales reps, a disposition sales rep, transaction manager, and an office manager.
Got it.
Yeah.
So yeah, our challenge isn't necessarily when things change the flipping side, but we still have a fair amount of overhead.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is your overhead running those 2 offices?
Yeah, I mean, this is just fixed costs, not even including any commissions or bonuses for a lot of the reps. We're right around between 190 and 200,000 a month overhead.
Yeah. So there's that. If the temperature changes, those are the kind of things that get kind of scary.
Yeah, it's funny because sometimes my wife will be like, I know you talk about the company's like not doing great. Like, do I need to stop spending at whatever Lululemon or something? And I'm like, it just doesn't matter. If you have $200,000 a month overhead, like it's so scary because when we were smaller, like it was like managing my personal finances did matter a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like, maybe I'm spending $10,000 a month personally. I've got a $200,000 a month, overhead at the business, and that's the only thing that matters. So it's very scary, but it's also, I think, necessary if you want to grow. So,
I mean, I have similar conversations with my wife, right? She's like, "Are you sure we can spend $800 on this?" I was like, I don't think she understands how much I spend every single month on my business.
Yeah, it's not going to make a blip on the radar. Like yeah.
So, so that follow-up question, this is from someone else. Who was it? But they were asking it. So then on that 500,000, like, what is your profitability on 500,000? Because we already heard, like, your overhead's 190. That's before cost of sale.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you get to keep out of that?
It varies a lot month to month. We are growing a lot, so we're spending a lot right now. Our target for the year is right at 35%. We're tracking pretty well close to that. Yeah.
And that's pretty good, right? Because usually it's 25 to 30 range, right? Like an excellent operation is like 45.
Yeah.
But like 25 to 30 is like normal. And that's actually not normal. That's a good company.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you're 35. That's phenomenal. DL Garcia on YouTube's asking, when you're starting out and you're getting out to local REI events, how can he present himself to be of value to other people that he wants who are successful already?
Okay. It depends on who you're approaching. I think you need to, just talk with them, figure out what their problems are, and see if you can provide a solution. Whether that be, maybe you're really good, like a lot of the people here at Steve Trang's office are with media, and you can help them, build a social media side to their business. Right? There's a lot of pretty big organizations, flipping and wholesale companies. They don't have much PR going on.
Mm-hmm.
We make a lot of efforts in that, but you can help with that. There's a lot of things you got to figure out what someone's problem is, and figure out how your skill set can fit in to fix their problem.
And I think that's exactly it. Because I get people asking me, right? Like there are people out here that say, like, make sure you're adding value, right? Great advice, but I think doesn't go far enough,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think you got to go find out what it is that they're struggling with. Hey, like what? Like let's talk about your business, get to know you, but then also like finding out like where are some holes.
Yeah.
Then you can say like, well, can I help you with that?
Yeah.
Who was I talking to very, very recently? Well, let's just go back to your example, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I will go mow lawns for you or whatever if I could just shadow you.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that'll take you up on that. You post in a local group if you want to learn how to flip houses. I had a lot of people reach out. You tell someone that you'll paint and cut grass for free, they'll take you on and let you shadow for quite a while. Yeah.
Okay, so how do you know how much to pay yourself from the proceeds? This is Isaiah on YouTube.
So that's changed over time. Back in the early days, we ran on bank account accounting. So if the money was there, it's going into my personal account. If it's not, maybe I'm putting money from my personal account in. Now we have a lot more structure to it. So we, all the management, including myself, are on salary, and we only do distributions quarterly. But right now we're actually trying to keep everything in the business because we are growing so much. We want to make sure we have a lot of reserves as our overhead has grown a lot. And as the market is starting to shift, we don't know what's going to happen. So trying to just live off that management salary and take quarterly distributions if needed.
Got it. And then Stephen Collar on YouTube, super sharp guy. He's asking, will assignment fees drop with the market slowing down, or there just be fewer buyers?
I can't say I know for sure. I've not been through a cycle. I'd like to think that it probably will compress.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one good side of the business right now, we have had such a long run of appreciation that most homeowners have a good amount of equity. Montgomery is a little bit of a unique market because up until here recently, we were locking up at just sellers payoffs. It did not experience the appreciation run that a lot of other markets across the United States have. So that's my only concern is if the market dips enough to where we're touching those mortgage payoffs at a large scale, then it's going to be really difficult for us to make a profit, and maybe we're going to have to go back to doing short sales and foreclosure auctions. But
or creative.
Yeah, or creative. That's true. They maybe a lot more. It's a good pivot because they're going to have those 30-year 4% rates, which are going to be amazing. Or, I don't know.
Yeah. On YouTube, Brian Luciano, do you have any type of IT or custom software to streamline administrative tasks and automate reporting?
Yeah, so we actually recently switched to from Podio for our main CRM to Salesforce. And, after the first 2 or 3 weeks of beating my head against the wall, just fixing problems, we're starting to build a lot of really cool integrations, automations, and reports and dashboards. But that's where the vast majority of our company runs through. Every single task anyone has to do every single day is in Salesforce. All of their KPIs are in their own personal dashboards that they can review in real time. They can see how they're doing this week, last week, this month, last month, as far as where they're tracking towards their standard, which is what's expected of them, and their goals, which they have rewards tied to. So Salesforce is the answer to that. That's what we streamline everything through.
Makes total sense. And then another question from Matthew on YouTube. Looking for motivation. I can make 5,000 calls over the next 2 months with my work schedule. Do you think I have a good chance of getting a deal?
Depends on who you're calling.
That's what I was going to say.
Where you're calling. If you're in Montgomery, you probably got a good chance. You're in Phoenix, not as high.
Yeah.
There's a lot of variables there. I think you make 5,000. Depends on. If you're making $5,000 on like a 20-line dialer, probably not. If you're making 5,000 dials manually, I think you'll get a deal.
Yeah. It was I got a friend, Eric Sage, right? He's done really well. He's been on the show before. And we were talking and he said, like, yeah, it's really nice moving my business to Alabama. I was like, what's going on? He says, well, if you call a wrong number in Alabama, they say, well, this is not here, but I hope you find them. We don't get that in Phoenix.
The Southern hospitality is definitely there. It's nice.
Yeah, a lot nicer people there. So Michael Lopez on YouTube, what makes you different in your market versus your competitors?
I think a lot of it is going from just being what I would consider a group of individuals wheeling and dealing and, just being little individual cowboys to actually having a structured business. There are not a lot of wholesale companies that really treat their business like a true business, instead of just individuals doing deals. I think having I think, to be honest, the number one thing that's gotten us where we're at is being part of a mastermind group. When you're in a market like Montgomery, we were already the largest wholesale player when we were at 65 deals a year. There wasn't a lot of people for us to learn to there locally, so we had to go out and find people that were doing 4, 5, 10x what we're doing, so we can learn from them. I think that's the key. Is when you're just bouncing off ideas off each other that are at the same level or the level below you, you're never going to grow. But when you get in a room full of people doing 10x what you're doing, that's when you're going to learn what you need to do to get to that level.
Absolutely. And then Steve Caller suggestion: reach out to old buyers, give them the short clips of news and insight, make them look to you for ideas of market. So yeah, if you give them some information for them to reach out to you, have you be the expert, definitely something that would be helpful. You guys, if you have any more questions, keep posting them. Happy to answer them for you. So other questions I like to ask is, what is your motivation? What is your why?
Yeah, I think I struggle with that question. I really do love this business. I love building a business. I don't know what else I would do with my life. I think also just innately within me from a very young age, I've been extremely competitive. And I think that drives a lot of what I'm doing here in business. I think a lot of people, a lot of my friends, they don't want to play board games with me because I'm not the nicest person to play with. Take it way too seriously.
There's a Monopoly board in their classroom.
You wouldn't want to play me. It'll not be fun. We won't be friends after. unless I win, which probably still won't be friends. But that drives me a lot. And, so going to like CG and stuff, I'm there, I'm learning and I'm inspired, but I'm also like, oh, okay, you've grown that much. Okay. I've got some work to do. It fuels me a lot, that sense of competition.
Any concern about having that much,
I don't know.
that much competitive fire?
Maybe, I definitely probably say maybe I overwork. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know it any other way. I guess definitely has its downsides.
Yeah. Because you kind of see like, you watch The Last Dance, right, with Jordan, and like there was a scene where like they had to cut the recording because he was crying.
Yeah.
Right. Because like he was really rough on his team,
Mm-hmm.
but because he really wanted to win.
Yeah.
So I was just curious if you've seen any downside from having that competitive streak. I've got that challenge too, right? So
it's a challenge. I don't think I'm that cutthroat, but
yeah,
it came with the challenges.
What is your biggest struggle right now?
It kind of goes back to just not knowing where the market's going to go. That's definitely our biggest concern. Making sure that making sure that we're monitoring local data, but also staying in touch with our top buyers. I mean, 20% of our buyers buy 80% of our deals. Making sure we stay in touch with them, that we're communicating the data that we're seeing in the local market to them. So despite them seeing headlines in the media that the real estate market's falling apart, hey, markets inventory levels are still at their lowest they've ever been. We're still a very, very hot market. Keeping them informed and making sure they continue to buy, because if 4 or 5 of them pull out, it becomes very, very difficult to wholesale. And so that's our biggest concern and probably struggle. I think the other thing right now is, it's not a struggle yet, but I see it coming. We're doing kind of our first new market. Obviously we have the Lexington office, but I've always in real estate there. Opening the doors in Columbus, Georgia, July 1st. We've already got employees that are training right now that are about to go to that office. So I'm worried about that. And I think that's what I'm going to ask about at CG, trying to learn from some people that have done that, like a cold open to a new market. What are the steps? What's the most important? If they could do it over. So
seems like Ren's got that figured out.
Yeah, I'd say I'm going to talk to him.
Yeah. If you guys don't know who I'm talking about, is Ren Bartlett. The guy is just a secret assassin.
Yeah, he is.
And even more fun in person.
They're our biggest competitor there in Montgomery for sure.
Are they?
Yeah.
That makes total sense. So planning on moving any other locations? We already answered that. Marketing budget, we already talked about that earlier. What is your favorite list for direct mail?
We have both Investor Machine and 80/20. I like both of them a lot. We get really good returns. I used to do it all myself. I used to hire virtual assistants to build programs to scrape the whole tax assessor and then try to do it all myself. And that used to work great back before it got competitive. And when we started doing Investor Machine, I started noticing that my response rate and ROI on my campaigns was drastically lower than what they were able to produce. And so we shut that off, and we do everything from Investor Machine and 80/20, and they're pretty neck and neck, and both really good lists.
Yeah, well, Jason Lewis is a really smart guy.
He's very, very, very
He did
bright.
1.7 million last year in profit, so he knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing.
And then we got Jesus Toledo, another really super sharp guy. We just we just signed up for 80/20 as well.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Kendall on YouTube wants to know, they're getting a lot of leads, but their conversions are way down. No offers. 240 offers last week, but no contracts. What are you doing to improve the conversions on your team?
Yeah, that's not good. 240 offers, 0 contracts. We shoot for a 25% conversion on appointments to contract. I would say when he says offers, are those written offers? Are those just verbal offers? Is that all virtual or is that in person? If you had 240 in-person appointments with written offers and you didn't get any contracts, you need to sign up for Steve Trang's sales training, because that's real bad. I think I really don't know. I have to learn a little bit more about their situation, but I would say you want to shoot to convert at least 20 to 25% of your written offers into contracts. And if you're not achieving that, you need to work on your sales script and your sales training.
Yeah. And then Ms. Navarro, how do you find out what a successful investor needs when you're meeting them? Do you just ask? So if you're going out meeting other people, how do you know what they need?
I would say, you don't just come right out, try to build some rapport, get to know them. It may not happen that first meeting, but they're going to vent to you if you really get to know them and ask them about their business, how it works, what they're doing. Just be curious, be positive and curious. And I promise you, if you ask them questions, they're going to be excited to talk about their own business.
Yeah.
And they're going to tell you what the problems are. So I think just be a positively curious person, and you'll have no problem learning what their problems are.
Yeah. I would say that, most super successful people, they're going to be slower to respond on social media. That's just reality, right? Like they're pretty focused when they're working.
Yeah.
But if you actually meet them at an event, approach them like they're not monsters, right? Like none of them are rude, right?
No, yeah. Like I'm so nervous to, you got like Stuart Denier and DG runs New Western, and so nervous. But talk to him. He's like the nicest guy.
He's the nicest guy.
So nice.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say just go up and talk to them. Everyone's pretty approachable. Like,
oh yeah.
There's this idea that people are closed-minded, or not closed-minded, but like closed off, whatever. And you'll find like the most successful people are the most open people.
Oh, 100% agree. I see it all the time at CG, for sure.
So Eric's asking, what's up, Eric? Who would win in a race, a Lucid Air or a Tesla Model 3 Performance? So off the line, Lucid Air is going to kill us, right? That's just the reality. But in a course, I will take the Model 3 Performance all day over a Lucid Air. That thing's too big. Like for me, like this is going to sound stupid, right? Totally off track. But you know how I'm measuring like which cars I want to buy? Like I actually have a list, right? Like here are all the cars.
Yeah, what's on it?
I'm looking at length of the car, width of the car, wheelbase, and skid pad, and 0 to 60. Right?
Not the things I think about.
Yeah, but I'm looking at
that's important.
the kind of cars I like to drive are the cars that are zippy, right? And they can if I need to navigate through traffic, don't need to anymore.
Yeah.
But if I needed to, I want to know like which car can do what I need to do. So, Eric, to answer your question, on a track, I would take a Model 3, but off the line, Lucid Air would kill the Model 3. But the Tesla Model S Plaid will still win. What is your superpower?
I think I have a really good ability to, in any kind of conversation or meeting with our team, any kind of conversation with the individual on our team, to kind of clear the fog and get them focused on the one thing that they actually need to focus on, whether that being like a group meeting, we're all trying to just talk about stuff and getting off track. I'm really good at getting things back on the rails and getting focused on what actually matters. I would say that's my superpower.
That's awesome. It's a incredible superpower as a business owner.
It's helpful.
And what is the greatest lesson that you have learned?
I touched on the culture issue and cutting out an employee if they have that's my greatest lesson. I'll give you two though. So one is, if you have somebody that's a performer but doesn't uphold your core values or doesn't have character, cut them out. You'll thank me later. It's a very expensive lesson if you don't do it early. Two is never getting emotionally attached to a deal. I've lost money on deals before, and every single time it's because my ego gets in the way of the math, and I want to own that commercial property because I drove past it as a kid, or that 10-plex that needs $300,000 to bring it back to life. Like that sounds so cool. That'd be so cool to show the before and after, but the numbers don't make sense. But buying it anyways and losing money on it, making sure when you're buying properties yourself to remove the emotion from it and purely focus on the numbers, just math.
Yeah. You know what I liked? What I like a lot here, because we use more clickbaity titles, right? Because we want the more views, right? Clickbait leads to eyeballs.
Makes sense.
So, you're talking about doing 500K a month, and we have Phil Green here, right? And he's doing millions, right? A month. And the same answers to the same questions, right? Like, how did you do it? Right people, right? Like, number one.
Yeah.
It's getting the people component right.
Yep.
And then the second thing is being in a mastermind with the right people.
Yep.
Right. So like it's kind of like, was it maybe possibly redundant, but reality is the people is the hardest part, because marketing, we can figure it out eventually.
Yeah, you can figure it out.
Sales, I teach that. I love that. Love teaching that. The next stage is the people part. Mm-hmm. That's the hardest part to nail.
Very, very difficult.
Yeah, we're a bunch of crazy people, you and me included. Is there any failure that's your favorite, best, or most interesting that we can talk about?
I can talk about one of those deals I lost money on where I got my emotions involved instead of the math, and it's I like talking about it because it's on the forefront of my mind, because it's not closed yet, but I'm set to lose a lot of money on it. The property's a 10-plex in a suburb of Lexington that it's in a good location. built in like 1900, super old. Need to stay away from that stuff. It needed a ton of work. The current owner had taken horrible care of it. He had all the tenants were paying weekly. You imagine the kind of tenants we had in there. Immediately we bought it and we kicked all the tenants out. But even before we bought it, the first lesson was the contractor I used on it. I got multiple quotes, and his quote was like 50% of all the other guys' quotes. He'd done one job for me before on a small job. And I was like, oh my goodness, we're gonna make so much money on this. His quote's so low. And sure enough, we kick all the tenants out. He gets started on the work and takes a large chunk up front, as everyone knows not to do, and disappears. So
Really?
I'm out, about $50,000 to him, and he's nowhere to be found. That was the first thing that's bad. And then from there, realizing that his quote of $210,000 was so low because he never intended to do it, didn't know what he was doing, and the real construction budget on it is more like 350, 375.
Ooh.
So that goes from a profitable deal to not a profitable deal really quick. On top of the other contractors that I was going to have do it are super backed up to where they can't even get started for 5 or 6 months because they got work lined up. And we're just selling it as is. We've done a tiny bit of work to it. We tore off this rickety old deck and walkway that was going to cause it to be condemned and put a new walkway up. And then we're just going to sell it. And the deal we currently have goes through. I'll lose about $45,000 on it, which is very painful. It's very painful too, because it's not just like I bought it cash and that's money I'm not getting back. We used a local bank and they fronted all the construction money to us. So I want to be writing a big check back to them at closing.
Yeah.
And that's super painful. It's a big failure for sure.
Good lesson though.
Oh yeah.
Chester's asking me what my superpower is. I would say my superpower is learning and being able to regurgitate what I've learned.
Yeah.
Right. Taking the things that I'm learning along the way, applying it, and then teaching the lessons from that. Camden on YouTube wants to know, what is the hardest thing that you have ever done? Doesn't have to be business related.
I think one of the most difficult things was actually, I was really dead set. I wanted to become an investment banker, but I had really, really amazing grades, but all the investment banks don't care. They, half of them, you'll cold email, they email back and say, sorry, we don't recruit from SEC schools. That would literally just be the response.
That was a real response.
That was a real response. Multiple sentences, and we do not recruit from SEC schools. Sorry. And so that was hard. I mean, literally, it was 4 or 5, 6 months of cold emailing, getting rejected, interviewing, getting rejected, cold emailing, getting rejected. There's a ton of competition for it because it's technically the highest paying job you can get out of undergrad with just an undergraduate degree. But that was probably the most difficult thing I've ever had to do. But I was able to get in there and realize that all that work was for nothing because investment banking sucks. But it led me here, so it's all good.
Well, at least you figured that out before a career there.
That's true.
It took me working in engineering for a few years to figure that out.
Yeah.
What book have you gifted more than any other?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, for sure. I know it's kind of cliche, but I love that book, and I've given it to a lot of people.
So I was invited, not official yet. I was invited to a dinner with Kiyosaki in a couple of weeks. So I'm waiting for it to be official because it was the invitation, but we'll see. A private dinner.
Yeah.
But that would be an awesome experience.
That'll be amazing. Yeah. I'm sure he's got a lot to say about the economy right now.
He's got. I mean, he's no different than Trump with his mean tweets. I mean,
he's very very out there.
Very clear on it's very clear on where he stands.
Yeah.
All right, guys. A few quick announcements again. If you like this content, or if you found this valuable, please like, subscribe, share, comment. It really helps us reach more people. Right. I'm very serious when I said I want to create 100 millionaires. Last night we were able to give a plaque to Ryan Zola, and that was an incredible honor of mine. We do have our sales masterclass. If you guys are interested in checking that out, go to disruptors.com, and then we do have our live event as well, disruptors.com/sales disruptors. And then we have Powering the Disruption. We got Eric Brewer, Chris Jefferson, RJ Bates. We're going to be doing a live debate show next week. So be sure to check that out. All right. What are some last thoughts you want to leave all the listeners with?
I just like to let you guys know, and I'm not some genius. I don't have any sort of special skills. I'm just a normal guy that became very dedicated to building a real estate business. And you can do it too. I think all it really takes is dedication, taking action, and then putting yourself, like you said, in a mastermind group where you can learn from those who've already done what you want to achieve. Yeah, I think that's all I got.
All right. If someone wanted to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
You can message me on Facebook or LinkedIn. I have Instagram, but I deleted it from my phone, so I won't answer that. Or you can email me, joseph@rapidfireinvestments.com.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Incredible honor. Thank you guys. I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. Next week. We got Part in Disruption next week.
Shout out to Steve Trang. Jump on the Steve Trang. We real estate disruptors.